Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Stacy Fox with Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association. We're very excited that you joined us today and for our next installment of these weekly market updates. Just know TSCRA is continuing to work hard on your behalf, and we're here if you need anything. We'd love to hear from you if you have other programs or other topics that you would like us to discuss online, as we're kind of grounded right now and moving to virtual stuff. But we still want to hear from you. We're still working hard on your behalf on a lot of issues. I hope you're seeing our weekly emails that go out to membership about what we're working on, and a lot of things going on still. But we're glad you're here today, and we'll go ahead and let you get into the meat of the program. But our speaker today is Stan Beavers. You may have remembered him from our first one if you were on the first webinar, but we went ahead and gave him the whole time this time because he's got a lot of great information. But just a little background, Mr. Beavers owns Ranch KPI LLC, which is a ranch management consulting company. He also holds an appointment with the King Ranch Institute for Ranch Management with Texas A&M University, Kingsville. After a tenure of 27 years, Mr. Beavers retired in 2016 as a professor and extension economist with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. He was awarded Professor Emeritus and Extension Specialist status in April 2017 by the Board of Regents of the Texas A&M University System. Beavers received his BS in Agricultural Education from Cameron University in Lawton, Oklahoma, and his MS in Agricultural Economics from Texas A&M University in College Station. Beavers specializes in utilizing key performance indicators to evaluate ranch management information systems for the purpose of ranch accounting, ranch analysis, and finding ranch efficiencies. He and his wife Tina have 2 children, Dana, who lives with them, and Jana, who's married to Jonathan Ramirez and lives in Vernon, Texas. They have 2 grandchildren, Natalie and Nathan, and all of them are involved in Broken Bee Cattle, the family farming and ranching operation. So if you've been to cattle raisers events, Mr. Beavers is no stranger to us, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us this week, and I'll turn it over to you.
All righty, thank you, Stacy. Get this set up real fast. All right. Is that up, Stacy? Can you see my slides?
Okay. Yes, I can.
You can? Okay. All right. Great. We good then? Okay, I'm going to assume you can see them, right?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, appreciate the opportunity to be asked back. Things have certainly changed in 2 weeks since I myself and Jeff Solly from Nebraska did. So things are really changing pretty fast. Last week I had the pleasure of sitting in with Dr. Peel's webinar as well, and I think he put it very well when he said, we're trying to assess the damage in the middle of the hurricane, because again, we all know we're sitting here in the eye of the current hurricane. We've been through one side of it. We're kind of got things happening, but we also know that there's other things going on that is still coming down the pike. So we got some things to still be concerned about. So things that I want to talk about, kind of 3 areas here, and I want to give us ample time at the end to try to answer some questions. that anybody might have. So, where we were before this happened, take a few slides and just kind of show you what, where we were and what type of productivity, what's gone on in the last 3 weeks and really since this thing has kind of raised its head in the U.S. And then finally kind of where we're going from here. So I know there were some questions probably still lingering from the last time we did this 2 weeks ago, and I want to make sure that we can kind of get most of those answered. So really pretty straightforward here. Where we were before all this started, you guys have seen this chart 1,000 times, I'm sure. This USB inventory. Probably the best thing about that was the last, as of 2020, we were actually starting to decrease the cow herd in the U.S. So, while we hadn't turned things around from a price standpoint for calves, we were at least kind of seeing the end of the light into the tunnel. Cow numbers were coming down. So, we thought, okay, so maybe in the next 2 years, we're going to kind of bottom price out and we'll start building that back up. That's where we were. And again, I don't think that changes anything. I think 2021 beef cow numbers will be down again, if not even more now, because I am afraid that there'll be some of us that may not survive this. We'll just have to wait and see. But I still want to be optimistic about all this. So things were turning around. Now, where were we in terms of supply? Oh my goodness! We had plenty of beef. We had plenty of pork, and we had plenty of poultry. These are as of this morning's report. You can see in the middle U.S. beef production. My goodness, we're sitting here producing 27.5 billion pounds of beef in this country. Lots and lots of beef. But again, if you couple that then with the number of cows starting to come down, we know there's a lag of about 18 months to 2 years. That once we peaked out cow numbers and we start bringing them down, it's another year and a half before we can kind of get the beef production numbers to come down. So again, we had plenty of ample supply. When all this happened, you can also see pork there. Didn't get a lot of news, but last couple of years was the first year pork actually outproduced beef in this country. You can kind of see what the numbers are, where they're putting almost out 30 billion pounds of pork, and we're about 27.5 billion pounds of beef. Poultry just keeps moving on higher and higher. So again, lots of stuff in being produced in this country. Not only that, but what we had in storage. Again, here we're looking at the cold storage report data. This hasn't been updated this month just yet, so that's back through February. Black line is the 5-year average. Green line's 2018, blue line's 2019, and then the red line is this year, 2020. Again, we were kind of running above average for sure, and running about the same volume as we had in 2018, 2019. So, lots of volume there. Again, lots of product to be moved. And again, all this is to say this happened before, all this happened. Then we sit here and talk about, okay, where were we heading to some degree? Cow slaughter was high, which kind of indicates, again, back to the first slide where we're talking about the beef cow numbers starting to come down. We were slaughtering a lot of cows in this country, and I've always quizzed a lot of my ranchers over the last couple of years, what's going on here? Why are we continuing to kill higher and higher volume of cows? And I got any number of reasons. One being, from one rancher, well, I had old cows. I had a bunch of old cows that I just need to get rid of that I've been kind of hanging on to since 2014, 15. When we had record prices, we were all trying to get as many calves on the ground as we could. But those cows just finally lost all productivity and they needed to come. So, so that was his rationale. Other rationales, it's just, we're having to sell these. My rationale was, these expenses that that you guys know, if you know anything about me, I focus on the financials of a ranch, and the expenses are just getting so high that at times, we're having to kill some cows to help pay some of the bills and some of the notes that the calf values that we're getting on a calf per head basis sometimes just isn't enough to pay the bills now. So again, any number of reasons why cow slaughter was high. Now, two things there that come to mind here. First off, increasing the number of cows being slaughtered certainly helps with that higher beef productivity that I just showed you. Well, obviously those cows get turned into beef, get turned into ground beef in most cases. So that adds to the beef supply in the short term, but also in the long term. The second note, in the long term, we're starting to disregard, to dismantle our factory here. And again, back to the first chart that I showed you where cow numbers are starting to come down. So again, things were, we were hoping we're kind of at the bottom of this price cycle. We would start seeing things kind of start turning around. Retail prices, we talked about the supply. Now, where were we from a demand standpoint? Top left, retail beef prices, and I know this is some of the consternation that's going on out in the beef country. I know those numbers are probably hard to see, but that retail beef price charts on the left starts in January of 2010. And we all remember, it was January 2014 and 15 when we really started to see the beef retail prices max out. And there'd be a lot of people that would argue, and I'm probably in that same camp, that once they peaked out in, let's say, January of 15, prices for calves, prices for feeder cattle, prices for fat cattle have not shown that same tendency that these retail prices have done. As you can well see, those retail prices have stayed above 550 really since January of 2015, whereas the prices for live animals, including calves up to fat cattle, have done just the opposite. They've come down about as fast as they went up from 2010 up to 14. So again, with all that said, we still had high demand for beef on the domestic market. Prices were still relatively high and people were still buying it, which was great. Exports was starting to benefit, and this chart's up through 11 o'clock this morning with the WASDE report that came out this morning. Exports were starting to benefit really from all the trade agreements that President Trump had put together with Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, all the countries that he's been working on. So things were really kind of starting to work there as well. Now, here is beef cutout, and this is one that's kind of getting a lot of media play. And what the choice cutout price is, you hear it referred to as box beef prices, and this is choice beef. So typically what we see is since the 2014-15, we've seen box beef prices somewhere between $215 and up to $260. The last couple of years, the 18 and 19 lines, you can see, somewhere around $215 to $240. And then all of a sudden, here we are in 2020, and things are kind of rocking along about 2015. And then all of a sudden, this thing took a jump. Well, as we all know, we start trying to couple this with what went on out in the world. And all of a sudden, we felt like that beef wasn't going to be there. People started kind of hoarding the deal. And all of a sudden, we get box beef prices up at $250, $255. Now that has certainly come down, and that holds implications for the next few months. That is now down to about 220 range, give or take. So again, that number has come down again. We're kind of past the spike up, and now we're going to head lower. Real question as to what this does over the next several months, and we'll talk about that in more detail here in just a little bit. Don't have to tell you what now cash prices are doing. Top left chart, slaughter steer prices. There are 1,350 pound animals roughly that are being harvested. When this thing kind of rose its head back in February or mid-March, this thing started cratering on us. At the same time, if you recall the previous chart where box beef prices was going up, they were going different directions, and I know that's kind of caused for a lot of alarm. And we'll see whether USDA does anything about it or not. I'll just leave that laying right there for now. We traded cattle this week at $1.05. That's what that dash line is. And then the bottom right chart, that is the April live cattle futures market contract. Doing the same thing as what the cash price was doing in a sense. Probably a thing that needs to be pointed out here, though, and you guys are living it every day if you're selling calves or even thinking about it. If you'll think about where the April 2020 was when this kind of started happening, somewhere around the $1.20 range, give or take. Since then, we've dropped this thing off to $85. Now, that is a huge decrease. I mean, somebody can do the math real fast. That's about a $35 drop on a 1,350 pound animal. You're talking about major bleeding going on right there. That is one thing in and of itself. But the second thing that you guys also are well aware of is the volatility of this thing. This thing, I actually was thinking about trying to find a picture of Bodacious. And for those of you that don't know, Bodacious is probably one of the best bucking bulls in the world in the history of pro rodeo. I think that chart looks a lot like trying to ride Bodacious. It's just up and down all over the place. You just don't know where it's going to be the next day. And I know guys that are out here trying to do good risk management by using the board, using the futures market. And to get whipsawed like this, is really just a mess. I mean, in my opinion, it's really unacceptable. But anyway, that's what's been going on. Then feeder cattle. This is the CME fetal index, which is based upon real cattle from 700 to 899 pounds of actual sales that's gone on. Really the same thing. You can see this thing being whipsawed. I think 2 weeks ago, one of the questions that I had was, would I be better off if I had a group of X number of calves? Would I be better off selling those in groups of 3 or 4, or would I be better off just taking a chance and selling? And in fact, that's what it is. You take a chance that what you hope is in the day that you choose to sell and the board's up and everybody feels good and the price is up. But, you may wake up and find out that the board is down. The next 2 days it's down, and if I've got cattle that need to go, I'm going to get, I'm going to get sorely upset about what I got for them. I actually did run some numbers for a ranch that just brought some calves out and sold them. And these weren't Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico calves. This is a ranch outside those 3 states. That ended up selling 8-weight steers for $1.16 when his break even was $1.25. $1.25 is not that bad. Again, January, it looked like he was trying to pencil pretty good profit in. He was actually trying to get them priced before all this happened at $1.42, somewhere between $1.40, $1.42. Got offered $1.37, did not take it, kicking himself now, but he ended up selling those calves for just under $1.17, which that in and of itself, when you do actually run the numbers, he asked me to look at the numbers, I did. That 1 month of procrastination on his part, again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We've probably all done the same thing in his shoes, cost him about $35,000 just in a matter of weeks. So, that's just something that's going on that we have to be aware of. There's Mayfeeder, again, kind of back to the bucking bulls, just all over the board. Again, to put this thing into context, the range on this thing for the last month has been anywhere from $1 to $1.30. You're talking $20. You're talking, $200 a head on a feeder calf. So lots of volatility there. To kind of put this into light, there's just no confidence in where people believe this is going. Okay. And if there's no confidence and if there's uncertainty in not only the cattle market, but any market for that matter, traders will try to push it down. I mean, that's just kind of the rules of the games they play. Boy, 2 weeks ago, I mean, this is a strange chart right here. This is cull cows. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the possibility that, you know, if you had cull cow prices was actually rising. And in fact, that you can see that bump up in cull cow prices that was going on at the time. Everybody was looking for ground beef, and we all know that's kind of where the cull bulls go. So given that all of a sudden you had increased demand for utility cows, for cull cows, and all of a sudden you started seeing prices go up, well, that door got slammed in a hurry. Okay, now then, and I'll start bringing some of these new little items in that you guys are aware of, stuff we need to be talking about for the future here. Now you start talking about packing plants that are going to, one, slow down the chain speed, because now they need to separate their workers by 6 foot or whatever. And again, you know, don't get me wrong, the workers in those plants, you know, are scared, and I don't blame them at all. I mean, none of us want to have to go to work, you know, in a combat zone. But in a sense, that's kind of what's happening in some of these plants, because again, until they started saying, well, we need some separation, you know, and one person, you know, get tested positive for COVID, you know, you got a serious issue. And in fact, that is what's going on. We've had a couple of plants already shut down. And now those that hadn't shut down, you know, we're starting to spread out the workers. And in fact, what happens, you start slowing the chain down, and we're not slaughtering as many animals as what we were, you know, a month ago and even a year ago. So all of a sudden, demand for cattle, well, if you're going to slow the chains down, you don't need as many cattle coming to the packer. And all of a sudden, if a packer has a choice of killing, you know, slaughter steers and slaughter heifers or utility cows, I can tell you they're going to take slaughter steers and slaughter heifers instead of the cows. So all of a sudden, just like that, almost overnight, utility cows went from about $68 to back down to about 58. And today, matter of fact, I was at I'll just tell you, I was at the Vernon livestock auction on Tuesday looking to pick up some calves just for around the house, and I saw utility cows. I saw cows being sold for 25 cents a pound. So, you know, that you can call that worst case if you want to, but there wasn't many above 50 cents. So again, that's kind of what we've got going on right now. So in the just past 3 weeks, just a few things, bullets here, just to bring things to light. You know, we've got COVID cases now that's soared over 430,000, and that was as of 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I'm sure that I know that's changed already. Deaths have reached, you know, almost 15,000. If you kind of want to know, and obviously we are all interested in this, but a piece of information, that last bullet there, and for any of you that has dealt with econometrics or econometric modeling or any type of statistical modeling, you know, you kind of know how difficult modeling is sometimes if you don't have real data. If we're out here just trying to make stuff up, the model's just going to give you made up results. Well, that bottom bullet there, new projections, and I thought this was relevant. I think this at times the good Lord is hitting a reset button on all of us. The new projection is the peak dead day. Golly, I hate saying that. But now it's projected to be Sunday, Easter. Now, I don't know if there's any correlation there between the good Lord saying, wake up, you guys, and figure out what's really important or not. But right now, that is the day when the models right now are saying that there'll be 2,213 some odd people die. And that'll be the day that is the peak of all the deaths per day. From there, we start dropping. Good Lord, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be talking of things like this. But anyway, that's kind of what it's got. We know what the jobless claims, I mean, by now you've probably heard what the jobless claim report said this morning. Last week, there were 6.8 million new jobless claims. This morning, that number is 6.6. You combine those two with the 3.6, I believe it was, from 2 weeks ago. You're talking, now 15 roughly million people with new jobless claims. And if you do the math, that's about 5% of the population of the U.S. Couple that with all those that are already unemployed, and you're talking about an unemployment rate in the possibility is of 8 to 10%. We got to get people back to work. I wish President Trump had been right when he said he wanted to have the country open by Easter. That's obviously not going to happen. But May 1st, again, that's not him saying that. I'm just hoping by the end of April, somewhere around May 1st, we're able to get businesses open back up, because that's what it's going to take. The longer this goes, the more drawn out it's going to be. Travel restrictions, I'm sure you guys heard this as well as I did, kind of an anecdotal tidbit here. Tuesday of this week, there was just under 99,000 people go through the security lines at the airports through home security, ESA. A year ago, that number was 2.2 million. If that doesn't kind of bring to light how people are traveling or not traveling, a year ago that was 2.2 million. This year it was just under 100,000 on the same day a year later. So that's pretty incredible. Don't have to tell you what's going on with the agriculture. You guys are living it just like I do. While food supply is abundant, logistics is problematic. That has been the case. That is still the case. Again, labor is a huge issue, not only from the packing plants, but when you take out the loss of food service as well. We've all seen the pictures of milk being poured out on the fields. Again, you take out, the number one customer of milk in this country, and that being the schools within the food service trade. There's just no place to, there's nothing to do with it. Again, you just killed demand. So again, we've already talked about the infected workers at the plants, ethanol plants. They're starting to shut down just because of the oil prices. And again, I thought. You watch this thing by the hour. You can almost get drug into this black hole of just trying to watch it every minute. It looked like, the Middle East and Russia had signed an agreement. Well, that turned out not to be the case. They thought it was early this morning. Things were looking up, but all of a sudden they backed out. And so all of a sudden you got oil prices down again. Again, we all know what gas prices are at the pump here. So again, you just can't put ethanol into $1.60 gallon gas and make it work. So again, I just stuck that last bullet on there. USDA extends investigations. They've still been investigating the Holcomb County fire back in August. But now they've decided to also look at the deviation between box beef prices and cash prices as well. So we'll see. I wouldn't have any big expectations that it's going to be resolved in the next month or two, if not the next year or so. So with all that said, again, trying to leave some time at the end here. We looked at this 2 weeks ago. For all of you that weren't on 2 weeks ago, this is a case study ranch that some of us had put together at the King Ranch Institute. It's kind of a teaching case. This is what we call the 281 West Ranch, and it's a ranch that's about as realistic as you can get. It's a 1,000 cow operation. If you're not that big, just divide by or move your decimal one spot. If I've only got 100 cows, or if I got 500 cows, do the math, and you'll probably be pretty close. So what I wanted to do is, like 2 weeks ago, kind of show you what the impact is. Again, this is no crystal ball. We're just in the eye of the hurricane. I think there's still damage to come. But the question is how quickly this all gets resolved and what the prices look like. If I'm a cow-calf operation and I'm a spring calver like this and selling my calves in the fall, what's the impact look like right now? So with all that said, here is, and again, this is kind of my projection, I don't say my projection because again, my crystal ball is about as black as night. So again, here is actual prices since January, coupled with what the futures prices for various contracts are showing into the future. So the red line, the top line is 550-pound calves. You've seen this one already. So that's the calf prices, 550 since January. The blue line is the 750-pound steer prices, or the feeder cattle index that we looked at. And then you see that first blue triangle. Well, that's the April board price, which was about $1.18. So you see the blue line go on from $1.45 roughly down to $1.30. That's the 750-pound feeder price. Whereas the April board right now is showing $1.18. So those have to converge. One's either got to go up and the other's got to come down, or they got to do a little bit of both. But those numbers have to come together at some point. Now, go on out now and look at the triangles farther out. Now you see a May contract that's roughly at about the same price, $1.18. You see the August contract then about $1.25, and so out you see on out past to the new blue diamonds, all staying below $1.30. The green line is the live cattle prices that we've looked at. And again, we traded cattle this week at $1.05, so that's the end of the green line. And then you look at the green squares. Again, those are futures contracts out to the future. So if you've now, I used to teach a lot about futures and options market, and I still think for the most part, if a guy uses them right, they're still a tool. I think there's certainly things that are wrong with them. That's my opinion and just my opinion. But right now, this is what the market collectively is indicating they believe at the end of today where prices will be in the future. So that kind of gives you some idea of what the market believes. Now, the one that's missing, obviously, is anything into the future for the 550 pounds, because we don't have a calf contract. We've only got the live cow contract. We've got a feeder contract. We don't have a stocker cattle contract. So we kind of have to decide from the impact of this ranch what that 5-weight calf is going to be worth into the future. So here is the last 3 years, and that's Oklahoma and Texas prices for 550-pound steers for the last 3 years. Bump forward to 2019 into August and September, you'll see that low, and I'll tell you that was the Holcomb County fire at the packing plant. That was a big part of it, but also that is traditionally when you see the cheapest prices for 5.5-weight calves as well. So you had two things happening there. You can't blame all of that on the Holcomb fire. Since then, we saw a big rally. Again, people kind of starting to get optimistic, just like what I told you earlier. Cows were starting to come down. It looked like we were kind of changing the direction of this cycle. So optimism there right up till a month ago. And now we've got this. So here now is a 3-year average. That same 2017 through 19. And I show you this because here we are on April, whatever today is, April 9th. And the seasonality says these are some of the highest prices that you'll have for the 5.5-weight calves. Again, there's not a lot of 5-weight calves out there right now. We know that because, again, if you think about it, 80% of the cows in this country are spring calvers, which mean they're weaned in the fall. So we have the bulk of 550-pound calves coming in August and September, which is traditionally the cheapest prices for 5.5-weight calves. Now, the point here is that is April 9th is about the highest prices you're going to have for 5.5-weight calves if the seasonality holds. So I do that to show you this, okay? So if these are some of the highest prices, and we're talking about calves somewhere between $1.60 and $1.70. Okay, that's where they were as of Friday of last week. What's going to happen to that price between now and September and October? And I want you thinking, if you're weaning or if you're calving cows right now, and you're going to be selling those calves or bringing them to town, and the market are deciding what you're going to do with those calves, if you're weaning them in the fall, what's going to happen right now and what could you be doing between now and then to change the direction of this. So again, now if a $1.65 is kind of where we're at, I don't like the thought of a $1.65 being the high for the year, because that probably puts cash price 5-weight steers in August and September probably in the $1.25, $1.30 range, and that don't work. Okay. Now, who knows what the future holds? Will we see this thing come back? And again, as I said earlier, the quicker we can get this over with, the better off we are. But the longer we drag this out, people don't go back to work. People don't start having dollars in their pocket. People don't start eating out, and we don't see demand come back for beef. This is going to be drawn out a lot longer. So be thinking about that and how it's going to impact you. So as I showed 2 weeks ago, here is that same ranch. And again, these are numbers that, again, it's a case study, but by golly, they're pretty darn close. Okay, I work with enough ranches to know what their numbers are, know what their costs are. So this ranch on 1,000 cows this fall would be selling 479 steers, average wean weight about 550, at $1.61. Heifers, 268 heifers, 517 at $1.72. 98 cull cows, 17 cull bulls. You can see what prices I'm using. So this was his projection back in December and January of this year. He was projected to make about $750,000 in revenue. Now his expenses, including labor, depreciation, repairs and maintenance, feed, vet, all those expenses was going to be about $729,000. He had projected back in January that he would make a net income above all costs of about $21,000. Now, updated. So if I go in there and based upon the seasonality of these prices, and I do what I believe is a worst case scenario. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I drop prices by 10%, and I drop all prices by 10%, including culls, because last time, 2 weeks ago, I actually increased cull prices because I thought that was going to be the case, and it was for a week, but shortly thereafter it was all over with. So now I've dropped all cull prices, or excuse me, all cattle prices by 10%. So the steers that was at $1.61, I put it at $1.45. Well, again, I was at some auctions this week, and I will tell you, there were 5-weight calves that there weren't many of them bringing much more than $1.50. Now I don't like that. But that was what I saw. Okay. Now again, $1.45 on the steers, $1.55 on the heifers. I dropped cull cows to 52. I dropped bulls to 63. His revenue went from 750 down to 672. Left my expenses the same, and all of a sudden, this is worse than 2 weeks ago. I'll tell you that. He is now projected at about $57,000 loss, or a change of about $78,000. Guys, if that's again, I think that's probably a worst case. Again, a lot of it is going to depend on how quickly we get this thing turned around. So on the best case, worst case, I think this, and it says probably somewhere between worst case and best guess. So well, I think it's probably worst case. Again, that's knock on wood, do all those things, hocus pocus, and hope that's the worst case. There's no doubt the economy's sliding. We're already in a recession. It's kind of like it's dead. It just hasn't been laid down yet. So we are in a recession. Again, how long that's going to happen, how long it's going to impact beef, how long will it take us to recover? So what's your number? Okay. What can you do now? Okay. If you know that your number is going to be down, well, 10% drop is a $78,000 change. A 5% drop is a $40,000 change. Again, if I left prices the way they were, there's no change. Your net income would be $21,000. The question is, what's your number? Okay. What number are you going to work with? Because you're down to 9 months of this year to figure out what's going to happen. Now, I say that because chances are, we've already spent a good amount of money not knowing this was going to happen. I mean, some of us go out and buy bulls in February or whenever, green up, we're probably through our feeding period. Are there things that you're planning that you may be able to back off of? We may end up driving that pickup one more year, and I know, I have ranch managers telling Stan, it's on its last tire already. Well, you may have to replace the tire. But are there things that you can do now to recover your, 40,000 or 78,000, whatever that number is for you? What can you be doing now? What role is the government going to play? Well, we all kind of know that at some point in time, we're all going to get a $1,200 check. If you got kids, it's going to be a $500 check for the kids per head. I also know that there's, I mentioned 2 weeks ago, there's $9.5 billion set aside in the CARE package, in the CARE Act, that is specifically targeted for specialty crop and livestock. Now, I talked to my guy who is pretty strong in Washington on 2.5, and his comment was there is a lot of maneuvering going on right now. And he said, Stan, as you can imagine, and just about every state organization, every state cattlemen's organization has letters already on President Trump's desk, on Secretary Perdue's desk, saying that money needs to go out to livestock producers. So every cattlemen's organization in the world is trying to get money to help offset all these losses. His further comment was, but we don't know yet. There's a lot of maneuvering as to how this money is going to get paid out. And I'll just throw this out because if you've been involved in the cattle last several years, you've probably got an LFP, a livestock forage program check of some sort over the last couple of years. Typically the way that worked was we turned in an inventory of our cows, of all our cows, our bulls and calves over 500 pounds. We ended up getting some number, okay, whether it was $20 a head or $10, whatever it was. To make this guy whole, and if I go back real fast and I look at a 5% drop and there's a $40,000 change on 1,000 cows, in order to make him right, he needs a payment of $40 a head to make that $40,000 loss go away. Now, is that what I'm suggesting? Not at all, because again, the last thing that my gentleman friend had to say was, we don't know yet. We know there's mechanisms like the FSA, and the LFP program to get money out, but right now we don't know how that's going to happen. So I wish I had better news. It's going to happen. The question is how and what volume and what we have to do to get it. So anyway, I'm going to stop right there. Appreciate the opportunity. Let me just go ahead and tell you guys happy Easter. Again, I think there is some correlation between the good Lord hitting the reset button and things happening around Easter. Maybe we all need to, obviously we're not supposed to go to church, but again, I've always believed that the church wasn't a building, the church is us. So happy Easter to all of you. God bless, and let's answer some questions. Thanks, guys.
Sure. Thank you, Stan. If y'all do have questions, pop those into that question and answer box, and I'll relay them over to Stan. We've got quite a few people on, so opening up lines would be kind of a mess. So we do have a question here. What has happened with the reopening of Tyson Holcomb? And also the last information that I received was that the STX beef company in Corpus Christi was only operating at 25 to 30%. Is that still the case?
The Holcomb, the plant is back at basically full capacity. Matter of fact, I saw a news release today that that one, the volume of cattle that was killing on a daily basis is back to the day before the fire actually occurred. So that is actually back. Now the Corpus Christi deal, gosh, I'm not certain about that. I know there's probably other people if Dr. Machen's on, maybe he could answer that question with an answer in the question mark. But I'm not real sure about the Corpus Christi plant, the old Sam Kane plant.
Okay, thanks. We did get another question regarding the live cattle contract. Someone who is long cannot request delivery. So how can the contract be modified to allow long speculators or long hedgers or meat buyers to force convergence of price between futures and cash? The feeder cattle has something of a similar problem too, but is not as pronounced as in live cattle due to cash settlement.
Yes, the feeder cattle is a cash settled contract. Again, it's settled off the live, or excuse me, off the feeder cattle index. And that is on actual cattle that are traded, I think in 7 or 9 states that weigh somewhere between 700 and 900 pounds. Can the live cattle be that way? Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't be. You do force convergence because, again, you do have something of a cash price, and you've got the 5-state area or the 5-state area live cattle price that you could actually converge back to. That will always keep the nearby futures contract kind of in bounds. It's those far outer contracts that even the next contract that's not the near contract that tend to get really volatile, and they really get tough to. There's nothing to converge to because it's not their time to converge yet, so they can basically go all over the board. And now you've got again these algorithm traders and the high frequency traders that love dealing in low volume. And when I say low volume, cattle versus oil or any other large volume. They love to get into these liquid or low liquid contracts and trade them because they know they can influence it one way or the other.
Excellent, thanks. I think you just kind of answered it because we had another question come through of what is driving the difference between live cattle contracts and cash.
And that's exactly what I would say is you've got such a divergence right now, and that's why I said between the live futures price and where live cattle are actually trading, those two have to converge at some point. If not, then people that have sold cattle that thought they were just doing it on paper actually have to deliver cattle, and that's still there. But that's what keeps that contract from not converging. If I go out there and buy a long cattle, all of a sudden my broker can call me and say, hey, what do you want to do with this load of cattle that's being delivered to Guyman, Oklahoma? They're yours. And most of those guys don't even want to get into there.
Okay. Do you expect the disparity between boxed beef and live cattle to resolve itself anytime soon? If not, won't the high price impacted demand recovery in a negative way?
Do I think the disparity between boxed beef and live cattle will resolve itself? Boy, I would love to say that it will, but the boxed beef price, somebody asked or somewhere asked how the boxed beef price was derived. And that's still between the packer and the wholesaler or retailer. That's a negotiated price. Packers don't necessarily control, the boxed beef price. What they do control, though, is what they're paying for live cattle. And you would think that just like the retailer and the packer on the boxed beef, that the packer and the feedlot would be able to negotiate a price, but that's not always the case. There's a lot of grid trading going on that is based on what's called live cattle trade, which now in Texas typically is less than 5%. Most of it is on contract basis. So that's one of the things that I know USDA is going to look at. In order to get those resolved, I think there's got to be some new, I hate to get the government more involved in my life. I know that. But at some point, there's got to be some regulation that says, there's got to be X number of % of live cattle traded, every week in order to have a fair trade. So that's my opinion on that guy.
Okay, great. Y'all keep those questions coming. We did have a question here. Maybe you can help us point us in the right direction, and it's one that we can probably help answer as well. But you have a lot of contacts and do some of this work too. But I need a quick lesson on retained ownership and use of cattle futures. What's the best way to achieve this?
Couple of things. Get with your extension service. I know here before I retired from Texas Extension, we offered a master marketer program. I'm not sure where the next program is. I've kind of lost touch with some of my guys, but anytime you can find a master marketer program, go to it. It teaches you all about futures and options and how to incorporate that into an ag operation. I'm not necessarily promoting them, but Cattle Facts does workshops on using futures and options. Those are around the country. A lot of times they're there in their Denver office as well. But to look at Cattle Facts, and I'm sure, Stacy, that at times TSCRA has done things like that at Cattlemen's College as well. That's probably where I'd start. I know the extension is always out there trying to help anybody, particularly on a marketing standpoint.
Yes, thank you. And we have done some of that. It's such a complex issue, but we can, I know that's a topic that members continue to ask for, and so something we're going to start working on. Well, you did such a fantastic job. I don't have any more questions that have come in for you.
Outstanding. Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear it, man.
I don't know if people are running out of steam or what, but
I hope I didn't give them so much bad news that again, guys, we've got to be thinking about this, because this, I guess if I was to give my opinion, this isn't going to get resolved in the next month or two. I mean, we're gonna. If you're a cow-calf operation and you're going to wean calves this fall, this thing isn't going to get fixed between now and then, is my opinion right now. You tell me when people are going to start going back to work, okay? And that will be the first sign that this thing is starting to recover. Now, again, from a morbidity, from a horrible standpoint, as I told you earlier, they're calling the peak dead day Sunday, but that doesn't mean it's over. I mean, that just means it's peaked. I mean, there's still a lot of time between there and the end. Another month and a half of God bless their souls, people dropping dead for the next month and a half after Sunday. I mean, they're talking, right now, they're talking the possibility, and this model's been redone a time or two, but right now they're talking about total deaths of 60,000 people. And right now, we're only up to about 15 to 20,000. Now, given that, I guess that's, if you want to think about it, that's a good thing, because initial estimates had all the dead folks somewhere between 100 and 240,000 people, but that's certainly dropped off. So I say all that to say this thing isn't over yet. It's going to take a few months to get everybody back to work, if not several months to get everybody back. And the longer it goes, as I said, the more difficult it's going to be, the longer it's going to be to get it fixed.
Sure. We did have another question come in while you were chatting. Would the cash cattle trade on cows be an example of what live cattle price would have looked like if they were traded more as cash trade?
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying. Yeah, it would be, but again, even the cows right now, they are live traded, but you talk about the bulk of the cows that are culled. A lot of those are contracted right to, let's say, Cavendish or something like that. So, they're using a hot weight there, which is not a live price, but they base it on a live price. So in a sense, yeah, it would be. It would, the live cattle trade would look somewhat like the cull cow trade. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, again, that's kind of the end of our questions. So, with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I know it seems like there's not a lot of good news right now, it seems like, but I think what is always has impressed me about this industry is the resiliency. And I think that's something that we as an industry need to move toward, and we'll be okay. We got another question. If you're still, we still got 5 minutes. If you're still
I'm
up,
good. Yeah, yeah.
so a strategy for the fall would be to wean and plan on being able to hold on to the calves.
I Dennis, I guess I can see names. Dennis, cool. Good to see you, Dennis. Right now, yeah, I would be planning if I did, if I redid my budget, okay, just like I suggested on this 281 ranch, and I saw that what my projection for cattle prices is not going to be enough, then certainly an option is retaining those calves, because again, depending on how far out this thing continues to be, you would hope by first quarter of next year that this thing would have worked itself out and we would have been back to to, let's say, normal, whatever normal is. But third quarter of this year, fourth quarter of this year, again, I don't think by the third quarter we're going to have it straightened out. Fourth quarter, it's maybe not. First quarter of next year, I would hope so. So again, yeah, I think that would be an option if you penciled the numbers and it worked out that way. Okay, I think it's certainly an option. Everybody still there?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was
No, no,
muted. Do
no,
you think it would be hurting or benefiting the market by ranchers trying to input a more farm to table plan right now?
no, I think it would. Gosh, I'm all in favor of that. Is it ever going to be a big part, of the market? Probably not. Okay, but again, if I, as a producer, a rancher out here, take my calves and grow them to, grass-fed beef, whatever you want to call it, or, whatever it is, and try in some way try to market it directly, power to you. Again, my thought has always been, if there's a customer wanting something, let's give it to him. Let's be the first one to give it to him. Let's give it to him the best way we can, as cheap as we can. So yeah, I'm in favor of that. I don't think it would hurt anything at all. I just want people to be realistic about what their expectations are with it.
Okay, great. What are your expectations for the live cattle basis as we move through the next 90 to 120 days? Will these follow historicals?
I would say they are not going to follow historicals. Typically we'll see, a basis that's weak between now and August, and right now you're looking at a basis that's extremely strong. So no, I think over the next 3 months we see a abnormal basis, but a basis that's probably in your favor. Okay. Again, the question is whether you want to take the futures hedge or not, knowing that's going to be the case, that the futures is actually so undervalued as to what the cash market's going to be. It's kind of a catch-22. If that's the case and the futures are so discounted to what the actual cash price is going to be, why in the world would you be hedging in the first place? Okay, so that's my answer for you guys.
Okay. We got another question. Our calves are fall calves, and we usually sell 1st of June. Any advice or prognosis for
pray. I don't mean that sarcastically. Again, the ones in my mind that have it the worst, okay, and again, I'm saying we're still in the eye of the hurricane too, okay, so I don't know what's going to be out past June, but I think the guys that are taking the beatings right now are the guys that's trying to sell calves right now off wheat pasture, and for the next several months, including this one, selling calves in June. I hope, by the start of the third quarter, when you guys would be kind of looking at possibly selling your calves, that this thing would kind of regain itself. My fear is it won't. Again, I'm just telling you what I'm thinking here. Yeah. No offense, Stacy, but everything I'm saying I don't get paid for, so I'm just telling you what my opinion is, and that's all it is. I'd be a little concerned for you guys. You may want to take a look at the opportunity of trying to keep your calves just a little longer. But if you do that, the problem is you're probably going to have to keep them till after the first of the year, and that's probably longer than you want to do it. So, do your best to get a good market, merchandise your calves. I'm sure they're great calves, whatever they are. Do your best to get them weaned, get them backgrounded to some degree, and do your best to get them sold.
Okay, great. What is the likelihood of the killer cow plants getting overbooked or turning away cull cows this summer and into the fall?
I think that is a distinct possibility. And to some degree, I think that's already happened. Matter of fact, I've listened to somebody report the other day, or maybe it was at the sale barn this earlier this week. They were basically saying the cull cows that were being bought today or this week were not going to be able to be killed for another 3 weeks. So they were going somewhere. They were probably going to a feed yard or some holding pen somewhere for the next 3 weeks. So I think that's a distinct possibility that, again, next 3, 4, 5 months, we could be that way until the plants come back online and we start killing cattle at 100% like we could. Again, even prior to all this, you guys know that the packing plants were, they could be pretty choosy. Again, packing capacity in this plant in this country has gone down. Again, they kind of heeded the warning and closed some plants back in 2014 and 15, like the Plainview plant. But they kind of took their own advice and got out of it. Now, well, that kind of put them in the driver's seat. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what they did. So this is only going to make it even worse because, again, now you take 100% capacity and you drop it to 50 or 60% capacity. They're going to have the potential to say, we can't kill your cows right now, and take a number, call us in a month, and hopefully we'll have a spot. So that's a distinct possibility.
Okay. Well, it's 4:02, so I think we will go ahead and wrap up, but we appreciate everybody being on. Stan, really appreciate your time and always being such a great partner for TSCRA and always helping us and willing to share this information. And again, I know this wasn't great news all the way around, and we didn't expect it to be. But I hope that we can, I know that we as an industry can work through this and arming yourself with the information like what was presented today to help you make those decisions just about what to do with your calves and when to sell and what to do. That is how we survive this, is making those informed decisions. So we want to make sure we're continuing to bring you the information that can help you with that and that we're in your corner. I know there was some talk about the money assistance available. We do have some of that information, and so if you have questions on that, feel free to reach out to the TSCRA office and we can get you some information there. A lot of that's still being worked out, so they're still working through details, but we can certainly help you there. But again, if you need anything, please reach out anytime. We're here to help. And happy Easter. Thank you all for being on, and again, thank you, Stan.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Happy Easter.